that I have seen in my 30-some years of studying this is just simply imagination or computer-generated graphics, which doesn't even show it happened. That's how we think it might have happened. None of that is science. Okay, science is things we can observe and study and test and demonstrate. So what's the evidence for evolution? I happen to like science. I collect science books. I have hundreds of them. I taught the subject for 15 years. I really enjoy science. People say, there's evidence for evolution. Okay, I don't think so. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they say, couldn't God have used evolution to get us here? Well, we need to define some terms. There are 6 different meanings to the word evolution. I cover this in my seminar. First, there'd have to be cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter. Where did that come from? Secondly, there'd have to be chemical evolution. If the Big Bang theory is true, the Big Bang produced hydrogen. You'll never hear them talk about this, but it had to happen because you have to somehow get uranium from hydrogen. That simply is not possible. Thirdly, there'd have to be stellar evolution. That's the origin of stars. Nobody's ever seen a star form. All we see are stars blow up. That's the opposite of evolution. There's novas or supernovas. We don't see them form. One professor I debated said, we're seeing a star form right now in Crab Nebula. I said, no, you're not. You're seeing a spot get brighter. And you're assuming it's a star forming. It could be the dust is clearing. There's already a star behind it. You don't know any stars are forming. What we do know, there's a lot of stars out there. There's enough that everybody on Earth can own 11 trillion of them to yourself. We've never seen one star form. So, fourthly, we have what's called organic evolution, the origin of life. The evolutionist has a serious problem with this one, going from non-living material to living organisms. Now, Dr. Rainbow and I talked before this debate, and we agreed we would only limit this discussion to, once life begins, how did it evolve? Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about. I don't think there's any evidence for that either. But I think skipping the first 4 steps would be fatal for students to realize, to not realize these are essential steps the evolutionist is simply trying to avoid because they don't have an answer for any of those. Lastly, or fifthly, we have what's called macroevolution. This is where an animal changes to a different kind of animal. Nobody has ever observed any of this. We never see a dog produce a non-dog. You may get a big dog or a little dog, but you're going to get a dog, and there are limits to these changes. Okay? You're never going to get a dog as big as Texas or a dog as small as a flea. There are limits. Sure, there are changes, but there are limits. And the further you get from the norm, the more problems you have. You start having hip dysplasia and disease resistance goes down and stuff like that. So the normal average generic mutt is probably where it started. And now all these special breeds we've created, like the Chihuahua, definitely swimming in the shallow end of the gene pool, are certainly basically useless in my book. But every kid knows that a dog, a wolf, and a coyote are the same kind of animal. We do this in churches. I'll get a 5-year-old kid, and I'll say, which one of these is different, boys and girls? The dog, the wolf, the coyote, or the banana? They pick it out almost every time. One kid said, the boy. And, well, it's the banana. Okay. The Bible says the animals will bring forth after their kind. Now, Charlie Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species. The argument is not about the origin of species. The argument's about the origin of kinds. I'm not sure who's deciding when a new species has been created or not. A dog and a wolf are different species, but they're obviously the same kind of animal. I'd like to meet the guy who's making the decision. This is a new species, okay? It's still the same kind. Lastly, we have what's called microevolution. I don't like the term. I think it's confusing. We should just call it a variation within the kind. But whatever you call it, number 6 happens. That one I agree with. All the first 5 are purely imagination. Students have to be taught to believe in these by computer animations or, pictures of how it might have happened. It all takes place in the imagination. It never takes place in reality. People say, couldn't God use evolution to get us here? Well, that depends what you mean by God. The God that would use evolution is cruel, wasteful, stupid. He's deceitful. He's not the God of the Bible, that's for sure. It's not in the character of God to use misfits, blind chance, and death. My God gets it right first time. Doesn't have to practice, okay? Jacques Monod, a Nobel Prize winner, said, natural selection is the blindest, most cruel way of evolving new species and more complex and refined organisms. The struggle for life and elimination of the weakest is a horrible process against which the whole modern ethics revolts. An ideal society is a non-selective society, one where the weak is protected, which is exactly the opposite of the reverse of the so-called natural law. I'm surprised that a Christian would defend the idea that this is the process which God more or less set up in order to have evolution. I'm surprised also that Christians try to blend evolution with creation. David Hull, Northwest University, said, whatever the God implied by evolutionary theory and the data of natural selection may be like, he is not the Protestant God of waste not, want not. He is also not a loving God who cares about his productions. He is not even the awful God portrayed in the book of Job. The God of Galapagos is careless, wasteful, indifferent, almost diabolical. He is certainly not the sort of God to whom anyone would be inclined to pray. Charlie Darwin said in his book, thus from the war of nature and famine and the death, the most exalted object we're capable of conceiving, the production of higher animals follows. Evolution is a religion of death and struggle and cruelty. It is not compatible with the Scriptures. My Bible says God's work is perfect. He made it right first time. The God that would use evolution is deceitful. It's not the God of the Bible. There's no evidence for evolution anyway. The Bible says God formed the world by His Word. He spoke it into existence. He did it in 6 days. He told us clearly how He did it. He didn't use millions of years to get here. I think it'd be a retarded God that can't make it right first time. I wouldn't worship a God like that. Okay? It nullifies the need for the death of Christ by having God use this evolutionary process, and there is no evidence for evolution. So why would we compromise a perfectly good Bible, which has never been proven wrong, with a dumb theory that has never been proven right? I see no reason to compromise in this war. Okay. Are they the same? No. The Bible and evolution are absolutely backwards in every respect. We could spend an hour talking about this one. They're irreconcilably different. Evolution says death